appreciated is that he has made DJ Moore the second-year breakout we thought he was going to be coming into the season. Taylor, who's a running back?
Talk about a breakout that we thought was going to be really good this season is Dalvin Cook if he could stay healthy, and he has stayed healthy. He's been my season MVP. He ranks third in the NFL in rushing this season with over 1,000 yards and is tied for second with 11 rushing touchdowns today. He didn't have as productive of a game 2 weeks ago as I had hoped, but he is well rested coming off a bye. I expect him to break out today.
Marcus, you have a quarterback you want to fight on?
I do. Old slamming Sammy Darnold there, who's been really good over the last few weeks. I mean, part of it has been the schedule has certainly opened up, but I think part of it is just he's getting comfortable in that offense, getting comfortable with his pass catchers. The Bengals is weird. If you look at their pass defense numbers, they're not terrible, but I think that's mostly because offenses are running on them, but they're not getting pressure on the quarterbacks, and I expect Sam Darnold to get the ball to Ryan Griffin, Jamison Crowder. I think even Robbie Anderson may get into the mix today. This should be a big offensive day for the Jets.
And that was Fantasy Insurance presented by Geico. And coming up, it is Sunday Fun Day. Who is going to get your lineup lit? We'll talk about that. But first, we're going to happy chat because this is Fantasy League One presented by Geico. Time now for 15 minutes to kickoff, presented by Geico. Here are the Week 13 notable actives and inactives. T.Y. Hilton will not be playing today, as will Juju Smith-Schuster. James Conner, Matt Breida also out, as is Jordan Howard. But in a little bit of good news for anybody who's been struggling at the tight end position, Zach Ertz is going to be available. So good luck to you. And that was 15 minutes to kickoff, presented by Geico. And before we get to the Sunday Fun Day shenanigans, it's time to talk about the struggle bus and players who've been kind of weighing us down over the past couple of weeks. And Marcus, why don't you kick us off?
Well, he hasn't been weighing down over the past couple of weeks, but Josh Jacobs last week was definitely on the struggle bus. Certainly was on the struggle bus last week. I think he gets off. I think he gets off it this week, though. They're going against the Chiefs. The Chiefs' run defense has been awful all season long, one of the worst in the league. And on top of it, with the weather being really gnarly there, I think it's going to be a situation where the Raiders are going to have to lean on their run game a little bit more. And I think Josh Jacobs gets a heavy workload because of it.
One of the players who's been struggling for me in recent weeks is Cooper Kupp, a guy who is a fantasy MVP at some point during the season, but ever since Brandon Cooks went down, kind of took a little bit of a backseat. He kind of fell off the table like a King's Hawaiian roll at your Thanksgiving feast, just laying there on the floor.
Womp.
But you know what? This week, going up against the Arizona Cardinals, this should be somebody who should get right, and I think that this applies to pretty much everybody on this Rams offense. And with Gerald Everett out, he'd been stealing some targets as well. I think that Cooper Kupp is going to get a majority of the targets and go out and do the thing. Sorry, Taylor, about that. What about you, Graham?
Chris Carson's was on the struggle bus last week after his 7th fumble. He also kind of had an 8th fumble that wasn't really his fault. Russell Wilson and Carson kind of fumbled the exchange, but Rashad Penny came in last week and dominated. He basically looked like the guy that the Seahawks were drafting him to be in the first round, showed a ton of speed and burst. I'm not sure if Chris Carson's going to be on the struggle bus this week because I don't really know if the Seahawks know what they're going to do with their backfield. I think they're going to split it between Carson and Penny, and even though Carson has been an RB1 in fantasy football this year, I'm not necessarily expecting the same kind of returns this week.
Let's go back out to the deserts. And I'm going to try to convince you
in
one last time.
In order for your guy, Cooper Kupp, to get off the struggle bus. So might I add that we're kind of on the same team here for once.
I'm saying this as a friend. Jared Goff. What are we doing?
He's been Goff-full this season in terms of fantasy.
Right,
he went to the Super Bowl
that's good.
last year. You would never thought that Jared Goff would have this kind of season with his receivers, but he's ranked 30th among quarterbacks this season. That's not something that we all expected. But if he is going to get right and get off that struggle bus, today is the day. As you just said, Arizona is allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. They've allowed 9 passing touchdowns in their last 3 games. If there's a time for Jared Goff to get off the struggle bus, it's today.
Sort of sounds like you're talking yourself into Goff of a car.
No, I'm not. I don't believe it because I've tried to play golf and it just hasn't panned out. And his offensive line just isn't good. I'm not going to let you overtalk me.
As a friend, come here, as a friend. Play Jared Goff.
No,
as a friend.
No, we're not doing
as a friend.
No,
I'm trying to do the right thing.
I bet you are.
Oh my gosh.
He just wants to see me get iced again.
I don't. I really don't. There's no punishment involved.
At this
nothing.
point, you've already fulfilled your Hippocratic oath. There's nothing more you can do.
There's nothing more I can do. All right, though, we're having a lot of fun here today. And it is Sunday Fun Day. Let's talk about some of the most festive players in this coming week. And you know what? Carson Wentz, talk about a struggle bus, has not been playing well, but now he's got Miami. You can't not have a good time in Miami, right?
You got a party in Miami.
That's questionable. You could definitely have a bad time in Miami. Right. But Carson Wentz is not going to have a bad time in Miami today. Look, the Dolphins can't stop anybody. And Carson Wentz, I know he's been certainly on the struggle bus in recent weeks, but this is just too good of a spot. The Dolphins are giving up the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They've given up, I think, like at least 8 top 12 fantasy performances to the position already this year. He's got Alshon Jeffrey back. Zach Ertz is going to play today. This is just an amazing spot for him.
Yeah, what is a reasonable expectation for Carson Wentz?
Look, I think the way he's played this year, I think you kind of put him around 20 points. I don't know that he's going to give you a huge blow-up game, but what he's giving you, man, if you can get 20 to 22 points out of Carson Wentz, that's pretty good.
Zach Ertz, like you said, is back and healthy. I have a feeling that's going to be one of his number 1 targets.
And Dak Prescott scored 23 points on Thanksgiving. I think if he has a game like that, I think that would be more than acceptable. One player, though, we need to hit the buffet line and to start eating is Saquon Barkley. Yeah. Is this it? Is this it against the Green Bay Packers? Can he get going?
I think so. This is the right spot. The Packers' run defense has really struggled all year, and over the last couple weeks, they've continued to struggle. And now today, with this kind of wintry mix and blustery conditions in New York, I think we can kind of sign up Saquon for a big workload, and especially with no Evan Ingram, no Golden Tate, we can kind of maybe even put a couple extra targets on his docket this week.
Yeah, I think that Saquon's just simply, even just because of the weather, going to be getting a ton of volume today because they aren't going to be wanting to throw the ball as much. So just based on volume alone, I think that Saquon will have a huge game, and then not to mention the Packers, I think, have the 26th ranked defense.
Okay, if you could only put one Browns player in your fantasy choir.
Oh gosh, I feel like this is aimed at me.
To sing that a cappella. Are we looking at Baker Mayfield, OBJ? Are we looking Jarvis Landry?
Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis Landry is your guy.
Yeah, I think Jarvis Landry is my guy. That's who I have, and I have Chubb as well, and I'm playing him. But Jarvis Landry's had 4 receiving touchdowns the last couple of games. He's been way more productive this season than even OBJ. You've got to go with Landry.
I think I might lean toward Nick Chubb just because he's been so good this year.
Volume is always there.
Volume is king, right? And Nick Chubb, you want that Chubb, that bass, that baritone.
Right. Yes.
I have no idea what his voice sounds like.
What if Nick Chubb has a very high voice?
Yeah, I have no idea what his voice actually sounds like.
This Steelers-Browns game today, there is so much on the line, and it's obviously...
It's almost like these teams don't like each other or something.
Yeah, crazy thought there.
Right?
And it's post what just happened, which we're not going to talk about that. But these teams, just in terms of what it means for both these teams going into the playoffs. And
huge game.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that everybody's going to be trying to have a breakout game today.
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll also be talking about our Watchmen heading into the rest of Week 13. You're watching NFL Fantasy League 1 presented by Geico, and right now, we happy chat. Time now for 15 for 15, presented by Geico. And let's get to some of these fantasy questions and give you your 15 minutes to fame. These are your people who tweeted in using the hashtag 15 for 15, like Jeremy Son, who said Brandon Cooks, Larry Fitz, or Jamal Williams.
Ooh. That's a tough one.
Well,
tough
if I
one.
was listening to you, you would say Brandon Cooks
I would
because
say
you think
Brandon.
that
I think
Jared
I would
Goff
go
is just
Cooks,
going to
too.
have this amazing breakout game, so he's got to have a target to go to.
Let's go with OGS. Start Thielen with the risk of him not playing, or James Washington.
Just because that's a Monday night game, I'd probably say James Washington.
Sort of sounds like Thielen isn't close to maybe 100%. If
Yeah.
he's not 100%, then he's not going to play.
Even
Yeah.
if he's on the field, I don't know how effective he would be. Avery Schwartz wants to know Zach Ertz, who's healthy, or Tyler Higbee.
I'm going to go
Ertz.
Higbee.
Really?
Just because I don't know. I mean, I know Ertz is playing, but I don't know. I keep reading reports that he's like iffy. I don't know. But I guess playing that Miami Sun is nice.
Yeah.
I
You
think
warm
it's going
up.
to be Ertz. Yeah, you got to go Ertz on this
All
one.
right, Ertz, you've talked me into it.
JoJo wants to pick two. Brandon Cooks, Sammy Watkins, Tevin Coleman, or Mark Andrews. Possibly flexing a tight end.
Ooh. Wait, what?
So it's
Cooks, Watkins, Tevin Coleman, or Mark Andrews.
Cooks,
of the four?
Watkins,
What a
Tevin Coleman.
dilemma, yeah.
Cooks for one.
And then Andrews?
Andrews,
Yeah.
yeah.
Andrews.
Tevin Coleman doesn't touch the ball enough. Eric Jonas wants to know, full PPR, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, or Devontae Parker.
Diggs.
Probably
Stephon
Diggs.
Diggs.
I think Diggs is it. And that was hashtag 15 for 15, presented by Geico. And before we get to our Watchmen, just want to let everybody know who's watching at home. We got Taylor to start Jared Goff.
You guys did. It's pure
I don't know.
pressure.
I don't know.
I don't even know what I just did.
Now
I feel like I'm going to lose, and it's
I don't
going
know. I don't
you
know
like
how I would
reverse
make-
Like all the
psychology
cool,
me.
all the
know
cool
how.
kids are doing it.
Let's talk about our Watchmen,
I can
though.
assure you that all the cool kids have not been playing Jared Goff this season.
They have
so-
not. They've been wisely keeping him on the bench, but I think this is the week to play him. And Marcus, who is your Watchman for this
We
week?
were talking about that Monday night game. I'm going to go Tyler Lockett. Last week was not a great week for Tyler Lockett. Didn't see a ton of targets, but I think this is a week where they sort of overcorrect. Like the last time he had 2 targets in a game, the very next week they loaded him up with 12 targets. Now, I don't know if he gets necessarily that many, but he should get more opportunities this week. On top of it, that Viking secondary, we've talked about it all year, hasn't been great. So I expect Tyler Lockett in a primetime game to show up big.
Taylor, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at Devlin Hodges. This is a must-win game for both of these teams. And Mike Tomlin said it earlier this week on his decision to play Devlin Hodges. He said, quote, he has not killed us. So that's not necessarily a ringing endorsement,
Not great
except
for Mason Rudolph.
something that I think is interesting to note is that Hodges had an 81-yard touchdown, providing some spark the other week with James Washington. I think he's somebody that you got to keep your eye on because he could be the starter for the rest of the season.
I will quickly go with Royce Freeman. This is a great matchup for the Broncos. Running attack, they could be. I think they're starting Drew Lock this week, which means they're going to be laying on their two running backs, Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. Graham, who are you looking at?
Will Fuller's a guy I'm looking at after a huge performance coming off a hamstring injury last week. Just went completely nuts for 7 and 140. Now he has to play this Patriots team that does not give up anything deep. I mean, they've given up a 13% completion rate on balls traveling 20 or more yards downfield. That's the second lowest rate in the league. Really tough spot for him, but Will Fuller and Watson can always get it done.
I bench Will Fuller for OBJ in a league. That's wise?
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
the way to go?
I think so.
All right.
Volume should be there for him.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for joining us here. Join us 30 minutes before kickoff on Monday night. This was NFL Fantasy League One presented by Geico. Good luck this week.
We'll be back.